The clock on the kitchen wall showed 6:47 p.m. Rosa wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand and grabbed another tray of dirty dishes. Her feet were killing her. She had been on them since 7 that morning, running back and forth between tables, taking orders, serving food, and dealing with everything that comes with working at a fancy hotel. This was her second shift today. She had worked the breakfast and lunch crowd, gone home for exactly 90 minutes to change her uniform and grab a quick bite, then came right back for the dinner service. The tips were good on days like this, and she needed every dollar she could get. Rent was due in 5 days, and she was still short by $200. Rosa had been doing this for almost 10 years now. 10 years of serving other people, watching them enjoy meals that cost more than she spent on groceries in a week, cleaning up after them, and always smiling. She was 32 years old, and sometimes it felt like her whole life had been about surviving, not living. She had come to this country from the Philippines when she was 23. Back then, she had stars in her eyes and big dreams in her heart. She had studied music at the Manila Conservatory, one of the best music schools in her country. Piano was her life. Her fingers knew the keys better than anything else in the world. But then her father got sick and the medical bills piled up. Her family needed money, not dreams. So she left everything behind and came here, thinking she would work for a year or two, send money home, and then somehow get back to her music. 10 years later, she was still waiting for that somehow to happen. Rosa pushed through the swinging kitchen doors and entered the grand ballroom. The place looked like something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, each one probably worth more than she would make in 5 years. The tables were covered in white silk cloth and there were flowers everywhere. Not just any flowers, but the kind that looked too perfect to be real. Tonight, the Grand Meridian Hotel was hosting some kind of charity event. Rosa did not know all the details, but she knew the tickets cost $5,000 each. $5,000. Just to attend a dinner. She could not even imagine having that kind of money to spend on one evening. She walked over to the bar area where some glasses had been left out from the setup. As she started collecting them, she heard a voice that sounded stressed and angry. It was Patricia, the event coordinator. Rosa had seen her around before. She was always dressed perfectly, always busy, always on her phone. Right now, Patricia was pacing back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear, and she did not look happy. What do you mean he cannot come? The event starts in 2 hours. 2 hours. Do you understand what that means? Patricia was practically yelling into her phone. I do not care about his family emergency. Well, yes, I do care, but I also care about the 300 guests who are about to walk through that door, expecting world-class entertainment. Rosa tried to focus on her work and not listen, but it was hard not to hear. The ballroom was huge, but Patricia's voice carried across the empty space. Find me another pianist then. I do not care how you do it. Call everyone. Call the music school. Call that jazz club downtown. Call someone who knows someone. I need a pianist here in 1 hour or we are completely ruined. Patricia hung up and immediately started dialing another number. Her hands were shaking. Rosa could see it even from where she stood. Rosa's heart started beating faster. A pianist. They needed a pianist. Her fingers tingled, almost like they remembered what it felt like to play. She had not touched a real piano in years. She practiced sometimes on a paper keyboard she had taped to her kitchen table. It was not the same, but it kept her fingers moving, kept the muscle memory alive. She stood there holding the tray of glasses, frozen between two worlds. Part of her wanted to walk back to the kitchen, finish her shift, and go home. That was the safe choice, the smart choice. Why would anyone want a waitress to play piano at a $5,000 event? It was ridiculous. But another part of her, a part she had tried to bury for years, was screaming at her to speak up. This might be her only chance. When would an opportunity like this ever come again? Patricia was still on the phone, getting more desperate with each call. Rosa watched her dial number after number, each conversation ending the same way. No one was available. No one could help. Rosa set down the tray. Her hands were sweating. She smoothed down her uniform and walked toward Patricia, each step feeling like it took forever. What was she even going to say? Hi, I know I'm just a waitress, but I used to study music. It sounded crazy even in her own head. Patricia hung up again and looked like she might cry. That was when Rosa cleared her throat. Excuse me, ma'am. Patricia barely glanced at her. Not now. I am in the middle of a crisis. I know, ma'am, I heard. You need a pianist? Yes, and unless you happen to know one who can be here in the next hour, I really do not have time to talk. Patricia's voice was sharp, but Rosa could hear the panic underneath. Rosa took a deep breath. Her whole body felt like it was vibrating. I can play. Patricia stopped moving and actually looked at Rosa for the first time. Her expression went from confused to almost angry. This is not funny. I do not have time for jokes right now. I am not joking, ma'am. I studied piano at the conservatory in Manila. I can play. Patricia stared at her for a long moment. Rosa could see her doing the math in her head, trying to figure out if this was real or if the stress had finally made her lose her mind. A waitress who could play classical piano at a charity gala for the richest people in the city? You are serious, Patricia said slowly. Yes, ma'am. Another long silence. Patricia looked over at the beautiful grand piano sitting on the stage, then back at Rosa in her wrinkled uniform with her hair falling out of its ponytail. Can you prove it? Rosa felt her heart jump into her throat. This was it. This was the moment. She could back out right now, apologize, say she made a mistake. Go back to being invisible. Go back to being safe. Or she could walk over to that piano and show them who she really was. Yes, ma'am, Rosa said quietly. I can prove it. Patricia looked at her watch, then at her phone where nobody was calling back with solutions, then at Rosa again. She let out a long breath. Fine, show me. But make it quick. I have 300 guests arriving in less than 2 hours, and if this is a waste of time, I will have security escort you out. Rosa nodded. Her legs felt shaky as she followed Patricia across the ballroom toward the stage. The piano sat there under the lights, black and shining and perfect. It had been so long. What if she had forgotten everything? What if her fingers did not work anymore? What if she embarrassed herself in front of everyone? But as she climbed the steps to the stage and sat down on the bench, something inside her woke up, something that had been sleeping for 10 long years. Her fingers touched the keys, and it felt like coming home. Rosa sat on the piano bench, and for a moment she just looked at the keys. Black and white, perfectly lined up, waiting. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished surface of the piano. She looked tired. Her uniform had a small stain on the sleeve from where someone's soup had splashed earlier. Her hair was a mess. This was not how she had imagined this moment, back when she was a student dreaming of concert halls. But this was her moment. Maybe her only moment. Patricia stood off to the side, arms crossed, checking her watch every few seconds. A couple of kitchen staff had wandered in, curious about what was happening. Rosa could feel their eyes on her. She could feel the doubt in the room thick as fog. Her fingers hovered over the keys. What should she play? Something safe and easy to prove she could actually do this? Or something that would show them what she was really capable of? Rosa closed her eyes and made a choice. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it right. She was going to play from her heart. She began with Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat major. It was one of the first serious pieces she had learned at the conservatory, and she had never forgotten it. Her fingers found the notes like they had never left. The melody started soft and gentle, filling the empty ballroom with sound. At first, she was nervous. Her fingers felt stiff. It had been so long since she had played on a real piano, and this was not just any piano. This was a Steinway Grand, the kind of instrument she had only dreamed of playing. But as the music continued, something shifted. Her body remembered. Her hands remembered. The years fell away, and suddenly she was not a tired waitress anymore. She was a musician. The music grew more complex, more emotional. Her fingers moved faster, dancing across the keys with a confidence that surprised even her. She forgot about Patricia watching. She forgot about the kitchen staff. She forgot about everything except the music. When she played the final notes and lifted her hands from the keys, the silence in the room felt heavy. Rosa opened her eyes slowly, almost afraid to look up. Had she done okay? Had it been good enough? Patricia was standing completely still, her phone hanging loose in her hand. Her mouth was slightly open. The kitchen staff had stopped what they were doing. One of them, Carlos, the line cook who always joked around with Rosa during her shifts, was staring at her like he had never seen her before. Holy, Patricia whispered, then stopped herself. She walked closer to the stage, her heels clicking on the marble floor. You said you studied at a conservatory? Yes, ma'am, in Manila. For 3 years before I had to leave. You had to leave? Why would you leave if you could play like that? Rosa felt her throat tighten. This was not a story she told people. My father got sick. My family needed money for his treatment. So I came here to work and send money home. Patricia was quiet for a moment and her expression softened. I am sorry. That must have been difficult. Then she straightened up back to business mode. But right now I have a situation. Can you do this? Can you play for 3 hours? Background music during cocktails and dinner, then maybe a few feature pieces after dinner? Rosa's heart was pounding. I can do it. I know a lot of pieces. Classical, contemporary, some jazz. Whatever you need. Patricia checked her watch again. The guests start arriving at 8. That gives you exactly 1 hour and 7 minutes. Do you have something to wear? Because no offense, but that uniform is not going to work. Rosa looked down at herself. Of course, she could not perform in her waitress uniform. But what else did she have? I have a dress at home. It is black, simple. Would that work? How far away do you live? 20 minutes by bus. Maybe 15 if the traffic is good. Patricia did some quick math in her head. Okay, go, right now. Get your dress and get back here by 7:30. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. And Rosa? Patricia said as Rosa started to leave. Thank you. You are saving my life tonight. Rosa practically ran to the employee locker room. Her coworker Linda was there, changing out of her uniform. Girl, where are you running off to? I thought you were working until close. Change of plans, Rosa said, grabbing her bag and pulling out her street clothes. I am playing piano tonight, Linda laughed. What? What are you talking about? The pianist for the charity event canceled. I am filling in. Linda stopped laughing when she saw Rosa's face. Wait, you are serious? You can play piano? I will explain later. I have to go. Rosa changed clothes in record time and rushed out. The bus ride home felt like it took forever, even though it was only 18 minutes. Rosa kept looking at her phone, watching the time tick by. She ran up the 3 flights of stairs to her small apartment, not bothering to wait for the elevator that barely worked anyway. Her apartment was tiny. One room that served as bedroom, living room, and dining room with a bathroom so small you could touch both walls at the same time. But it was hers and it was clean. On her kitchen table sat the paper keyboard she had made, with keys drawn on in marker. She had spent countless hours practicing on it, keeping her skills alive even though it made no sound. Rosa went to her closet and pulled out the dress. It was simple black, nothing fancy. She had bought it at a thrift store 3 years ago for a cousin's wedding. It was the nicest thing she owned. She held it up and prayed it still fit. She had lost some weight since then, working double shifts and sometimes forgetting to eat properly. She changed quickly, then looked at herself in the small mirror hanging on the wall. The dress fit, maybe a little loose, but it would work. She brushed her hair and pulled it back into a neat bun. A little makeup to hide how tired she looked. Some cheap lipstick she had been saving for special occasions. Was this really happening? Was she really about to play piano for 300 rich people at the Grand Meridian Hotel? Rosa grabbed her bag and ran back down the stairs. The bus back to the hotel took forever. There was traffic. Of course there was traffic. She checked her phone every 30 seconds. 7:15, 7:18, 7:23. The bus finally pulled up near the hotel at 7:28. Rosa jumped off and ran through the employee entrance. She could already see expensive cars pulling up to the front. The guests were starting to arrive. She found Patricia near the ballroom entrance talking rapidly to someone on her headset. When Patricia saw Rosa, her whole body relaxed. Oh, thank God. I was starting to think you were not coming back. Patricia looked Rosa up and down. The dress was not designer and her shoes were old, but it would work. You look good. Simple, elegant, perfect. The piano is all set up. The sound guy tested everything. You just need to start playing at 8 sharp. Start with something light and pleasant. The guests will be having cocktails. Nothing too dramatic yet. Save the impressive stuff for after dinner. Can you do that? Rosa nodded even though her hands were shaking. I can do that. Good, now get up there. You have 3 minutes. Rosa walked through the ballroom. It looked completely different now. The lights were dimmed to a warm glow. Waiters in crisp uniforms stood ready with trays of champagne. Through the windows she could see the first guests arriving, stepping out of limousines and luxury cars. She climbed onto the stage and sat at the piano. Her piano, at least for tonight. She placed her hands on the keys and took a deep breath. At exactly 8 o'clock, the first guests walked into the ballroom, and Rosa began to play. The first notes floated across the ballroom like whispers. Rosa played softly, something light and beautiful by Debussy. Her fingers moved gently over the keys, creating music that blended into the background, pleasant and unobtrusive. This was what they wanted right now. Background music. Something pretty while people talked and drank champagne. The guests streamed in wearing clothes that probably cost more than Rosa's entire yearly salary. The women wore gowns that sparkled under the chandeliers with jewelry that caught the light every time they moved. The men looked sharp in expensive suits and bow ties. They laughed and chatted, air kissing each other's cheeks, holding crystal glasses filled with golden champagne. Nobody looked at Rosa. She was just part of the scenery, like the flower arrangements and the ice sculptures shaped like swans. She might as well have been invisible, and honestly, Rosa did not mind. Being invisible was familiar, comfortable even. She had spent 10 years being invisible, serving these same kind of people their meals, refilling their water glasses, clearing their plates. They never really saw her then either. Why would tonight be any different? She shifted into a gentle piece by Saudi, her fingers barely pressing the keys. The music floated around the room like perfume. A few people glanced in her direction with mild appreciation, the way you might notice a pretty painting on a wall. But then they went right back to their conversations. Rosa caught snippets of their talk as she played. A woman in a red dress was complaining about how hard it was to find good help for her summer house. A man with silver hair was bragging about his son getting into an Ivy League school. Another group was discussing their upcoming vacation to some private island Rosa had never heard of. These were not bad people, Rosa reminded herself. They just lived in a different world. A world where $5,000 dinners were normal, where private jets and designer clothes and summer houses were just part of life. They probably worked hard for their money. Most of them anyway. But still, sitting there playing for them while they barely noticed her existence, Rosa felt the distance between their world and hers. She thought about her apartment with its broken elevator and thin walls. She thought about how she had eaten rice and eggs for dinner 3 nights this week, because that was all she could afford after sending money home to her mother. She thought about her father who had died 2 years ago despite all her efforts, all the money she had sent, all the sacrifices she had made. Stop it, she told herself. Do not think about that now. Just play. Dinner was served and Rosa transitioned into more classical pieces. Chopin, Mozart, a little Bach. Her fingers knew these pieces so well she did not even have to think about them anymore. Her hands played while her mind wandered. She watched the waiters moving between tables. She recognized most of them. There was Danny, who was saving money to go back to school. Lisa, who was a single mom with 2 kids. Miguel, who sent money back to his family in Mexico just like Rosa did to the Philippines. They were all working tonight, just like she had worked hundreds of nights before, serving people who would never remember their faces or know their stories. But tonight, Rosa was on the other side. Tonight she was not carrying plates. She was making music. It felt strange and wonderful and a little bit sad all at the same time. The dinner service went on forever, course after course of fancy food that Rosa could not even pronounce. The guests ate and talked and laughed. The wine flowed. Nobody paid attention to the woman at the piano who was making the soundtrack for their evening. Rosa's back started to hurt from sitting so long. Her fingers were getting tired. But she kept playing. This was her job tonight and she was going to do it well, even if nobody noticed. Then about 2 hours into the evening, Patricia appeared at the edge of the stage. She looked stressed again, though not as panicked as before. She leaned in close to Rosa so she could hear over the music. Okay, slight problem, Patricia whispered. The entertainment for after dinner. The singer we hired, she is stuck in traffic. Some kind of accident on the highway. She is not going to make it. Rosa kept playing, but her heart started beating faster. She knew what was coming next. I need you to keep playing, but not like this. I need something that will actually hold their attention. Something that will keep them entertained for at least 20 minutes until we can figure out what to do next. Can you do that? Rosa's fingers stumbled over a note. This was different. This was not background music. This was performing. Being seen. Being heard. Being judged. I do not know, Rosa said quietly, still playing. What do you want me to play? I do not know. Something impressive. Something that will make them actually stop talking and listen. Do you have anything like that? Rosa thought about the piece she had composed years ago, back when she was still a student. It was the most personal thing she had ever created, a piece that told the story of leaving home, of struggle, of hope that refused to die, even when everything seemed impossible. She had never played it for anyone except her teacher at the conservatory. It was too raw, too honest, too much of herself, but maybe that was exactly what she needed to play. I have something, Rosa said, but it is different, not traditional classical. I do not care if you play rock and roll on that thing, Patricia said. I just need you to fill 20 minutes and keep these people happy. Can you do it? Rosa looked out at the crowd of wealthy guests finishing their desserts, still completely unaware of her existence. In a few minutes they would be aware. They would be watching, judging. These were people who went to the opera and the symphony, people who knew good music when they heard it. What if they hated what she played? What if they laughed? But then again, what did she have to lose? Tomorrow she would go back to being a waitress. Back to being invisible. This might be her only chance to share the music she had carried in her heart all these years. Yes, Rosa said, her voice stronger now. I can do it. Good, you start in 5 minutes. Right after they finished the auction announcements. Patricia walked away and Rosa's hands were shaking so badly she had to stop playing for a moment. She put them in her lap and took several deep breaths. 5 minutes. She had 5 minutes to prepare herself to be seen, really seen for the first time in 10 years. Around her, the ballroom buzzed with conversation and laughter. The waiters cleared the dessert plates. Someone clinked a glass to make a toast. The auction announcements began, some charity board member talking about all the wonderful things they were supporting tonight. Rosa barely heard any of it. Her mind was going over the piece she was about to play, checking every note, every transition, every emotion she had poured into it all those years ago. Her fingers moved slightly in her lap, practicing without touching any keys. Then the announcements ended. There was polite applause. Rosa saw Patricia near the front of the room, gesturing at her. This was it. Rosa placed her hands back on the keys. She adjusted her position on the bench. She looked out at the 300 people who were about to become her audience. And then, before she could talk herself out of it, before the fear could take over, she began to play. The first notes were different from anything she had played all night. Louder, more dramatic, more alive. Heads started to turn almost immediately. The first notes floated across the ballroom like whispers. Rosa played softly, something light and beautiful by Debussy. Her fingers moved gently over the keys, creating music that blended into the background, pleasant and unobtrusive. This was what they wanted right now. Background music. Something pretty while people talked and drank champagne. The guests streamed in wearing clothes that probably cost more than Rosa made in a year. The women wore gowns that sparkled under the chandeliers, with jewelry that caught the light every time they moved. The men looked sharp in expensive suits and bow ties. They laughed and chatted, greeting each other with hugs and kisses, holding crystal glasses filled with golden champagne. Nobody looked at Rosa. She was just part of the scenery. Like the flower arrangements and the ice sculptures shaped like swans, she might as well have been invisible. And honestly, Rosa did not mind. Being invisible was familiar, comfortable even. She had spent 10 years being invisible, serving these same kind of people their meals, refilling their water glasses, clearing their plates. They never really saw her then either. Why would tonight be any different? She shifted into a gentle piece by Satie, her fingers barely pressing the keys. The music floated around the room like perfume. A few people glanced in her direction with mild appreciation, the way you might notice a nice painting on a wall, but then they went right back to their conversations. Rosa caught bits and pieces of their talk as she played. A woman in a red dress was complaining about how hard it was to find someone to take care of her vacation home. A man with silver hair was talking loudly about his stock portfolio. Another group was discussing their upcoming trip to some tropical resort Rosa had never heard of. These were not bad people, Rosa reminded herself. They just lived in a completely different world. A world where $5,000 dinners were normal, where private planes and designer clothes and vacation homes were just part of everyday life. They probably worked hard for their success, most of them anyway. But still, sitting there playing for them while they barely noticed her existence, Rosa felt the huge distance between their world and hers. She thought about her tiny apartment with its broken elevator and walls so thin, she could hear her neighbors arguing. She thought about how she had eaten nothing but rice and eggs for dinner 3 nights this week, because that was all she could afford after sending money home to her mother. She thought about her father, who had passed away 2 years ago despite everything she had sacrificed, all the money she had sent, all the dreams she had given up. Stop it, she told herself. Do not think about that now. Just play. Dinner began and Rosa moved into more classical pieces. Chopin, Mozart, a little Bach. Her fingers knew these pieces so well she did not even have to think about them anymore. Her hands played while her mind drifted. She watched the waiters moving between tables. She recognized most of them. There was Danny, who was saving money to finish college. Lisa, who was raising 2 kids on her own. Miguel, who sent half his paycheck back to his family in Mexico, just like Rosa did to the Philippines. They were all working tonight, just like she had worked hundreds of nights before, serving people who would never remember their faces or know their stories. But tonight, Rosa was on the other side. Tonight she was not carrying heavy trays. She was making music. It felt strange and wonderful and a little bit sad all at the same time. The dinner service went on and on. Course after course of fancy food with names Rosa could not pronounce. Tiny portions arranged like art on huge white plates. The guests ate slowly, talked constantly, and laughed often. The wine kept flowing. Nobody paid any real attention to the woman at the piano who was creating the soundtrack for their evening. Rosa's back started to ache from sitting so long. Her fingers were getting tired. She had been playing for almost 2 hours straight. But she kept going. This was her job tonight and she was going to do it perfectly, even if nobody was listening. Around 9:30, she saw Linda walk past carrying a tray of coffee cups. Their eyes met for just a second, and Linda gave her a small, amazed smile before disappearing back toward the kitchen. It made Rosa feel a little less alone up there on the stage. Then, just as Rosa was transitioning into another Chopin piece, Patricia appeared at the edge of the stage. She looked stressed again, though not quite as panicked as before. She motioned for Rosa to keep playing while she leaned in close. "Okay, we have a situation," Patricia whispered, trying not to disturb the nearby tables. "The singer we booked for after dinner just called. She is stuck in some massive traffic jam. There was an accident on the freeway. She says she might not make it at all, or if she does, it will be another hour at least." Rosa's fingers stumbled slightly on the keys, but she recovered quickly. She had a feeling she knew what was coming next. "I need you to do more than background music," Patricia continued in a hushed voice. "After they finish dinner and do the charity auction bit, I need you to actually perform. Something that will grab their attention and keep them entertained for at least 20 or 30 minutes. Can you handle that?" Rosa's heart started pounding so hard she thought everyone in the room must be able to hear it. This was completely different. This was not gentle background music that nobody paid attention to. This was a real performance. These people would actually be watching her, listening to her, judging her. "I do not know," Rosa said quietly, her fingers still playing even though her mind was racing. "What kind of piece do you want?" "Something impressive. Something that will make them stop talking and actually pay attention. You know, something that shows you are really talented." Patricia looked at her watch. "You have got maybe 15 minutes to think about it. The auction announcement starts soon and then you are on." Rosa felt her mouth go dry. What could she play? Another classical piece? Something safe that she knew these people would recognize and approve of? Or should she take a risk? She thought about the composition she had written herself, years ago when she was still a music student full of dreams. It was a piece about leaving everything behind, about working in a foreign country where nobody knew your name or cared about your story, about missing home so much it physically hurt, about refusing to give up even when giving up would be so much easier. She had only played it once for her teacher at the conservatory. He had told her it was brilliant but too emotional, too personal. He said she should focus on the classics if she wanted a real career. But that was before everything fell apart, before life got in the way of dreams. "I have something," Rosa finally said, "but it is not traditional. It is something I wrote myself." Patricia's eyebrows went up. "You compose music too?" "I used to. I have not written anything in years, but I still remember this piece. Does it sound good? Will these people like it?" Rosa thought about how to answer that. "I do not know if they will like it, but it is honest." It is real. Patricia seemed to consider this for a moment. She looked around the room at all the wealthy guests in their expensive clothes, then back at Rosa in her simple thrift store dress. You know what? Go for it. These people go to fancy concerts all the time. Give them something different. Something they will actually remember. Okay, Rosa whispered, though her voice shook. I will do it. Patricia squeezed her shoulder quickly and walked away. Rosa continued playing her background music, but inside she was freaking out. What had she just agreed to? These were not just random people. These were the richest, most successful people in the city. People who donated to symphonies and opera houses. People who knew what good music was supposed to sound like. And she was about to play them something she had written in a tiny dorm room 10 years ago, pouring all her homesickness and fear and desperate hope into the notes. What if they hated it? What if they thought it was amateur and silly? What if they laughed? But another voice in her head, quieter but stronger, asked a different question. What if they loved it? What if this was the moment everything changed? The auction announcements began. Someone from the charity board stood up and started talking about all the good work they were doing, all the lives they were changing with the money raised tonight. Rosa barely heard the words. She was going over her piece in her mind, checking every note, every transition, making sure she remembered it all correctly. Her hands felt sweaty. She wiped them discreetly on her dress. Deep breaths. She could do this. She had to do this. The announcements ended. Polite applause rippled through the room. Patricia caught her eye from across the ballroom and nodded. This was it. No more hiding. No more being invisible. Rosa adjusted her position on the bench. She placed her hands on the keys and let them rest there for a moment. She looked out at the sea of faces, most still talking to each other, finishing their wine, completely unaware that anything was about to change. Then Rosa closed her eyes, took one more deep breath, and began to play her truth. More people crowded around the stage. A young woman who looked barely out of college introduced herself as a talent agent. An older gentleman said he owned a recording studio and wanted to discuss a demo. Someone else was asking about her availability for private events. The questions came so fast Rosa could barely process them. Please, everyone, give her some space, Patricia said, stepping between Rosa and the growing crowd. She just finished performing. Let her breathe for a minute. But even as Patricia tried to create some distance, people kept approaching. A woman pressed her phone number into Rosa's hand, begging her to call about a concert series. A man wanted to know if she had recorded any of her compositions. Another person was already talking about a documentary. Rosa stood there, completely overwhelmed. Just 2 hours ago, she had been invisible. Now she felt like she was drowning in attention. Her hands were still shaking. Her heart was racing. This did not feel real. Any moment now she would wake up in her tiny apartment and realize this had all been a dream. Rosa, are you okay? Patricia asked quietly, genuine concern in her voice. You look like you might pass out. I think I need to sit down, Rosa whispered. Patricia quickly cleared a space and found Rosa a chair. Someone handed her a glass of water. The crowd backed up slightly, though nobody left. They all stood there watching her, waiting to talk to her, their faces full of excitement and interest. Rosa sipped the water and tried to calm down. She looked at all the business cards people had pressed into her hands. Vincent Chen from the Performing Arts Center, Catherine Reynolds from the university, a talent agent named Rebecca Torres, a music producer, a concert promoter. There had to be at least 15 cards, maybe more. This is crazy, Rosa said to Patricia. This cannot be real. Patricia laughed and shook her head. Trust me, this is very real. I have been in this business for 15 years, and what just happened? That does not happen often. You touched something in people tonight. Something real. Linda appeared at the edge of the crowd, still in her waitress uniform, her eyes huge. Rosa? Oh my God, Rosa! Everyone in the kitchen heard the applause. What happened? Are you okay? I do not know, Rosa said honestly. I do not know what is happening. Linda squeezed through the crowd and hugged her tight. Girl, you just changed your whole life. That is what is happening. Over the next hour, Rosa tried her best to talk to everyone who wanted to speak with her. Vincent Chen explained that his Performing Arts Center hosted emerging artists and would love to feature her in their new talent showcase next month. Catherine Reynolds offered her a full scholarship to finish her music degree, including private lessons and access to the university's concert hall for practice. Rebecca Torres, the talent agent, talked about representation and career development, and opportunities Rosa had never even dreamed of. It was all too much. Too fast, too overwhelming. Around 11 o'clock, the guests finally started leaving. People stopped Rosa on their way out to shake her hand, to tell her how moved they were, to take selfies with her. A few even asked for her autograph, which seemed absolutely ridiculous to Rosa. She was nobody. She was just a waitress who happened to play piano. Except apparently she was not just anything anymore. When the ballroom finally emptied out, Rosa sat back down at the piano. The room was quiet now except for the sound of the catering staff cleaning up. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys, still unable to believe what had just happened. "You going to be okay?" Linda asked, coming to sit beside her. She had finished her shift and changed out of her uniform. "I do not know," Rosa said. "Linda, what if this is it? What if this is my only chance and I mess it up somehow?" "Then you mess it up," Linda said simply. "But at least you tried. At least you put yourself out there. Do you know how many people never even get a chance like this?" Rosa thought about all the other waiters and waitresses, all the people working jobs they did not love, holding on to dreams they had given up on. I know how lucky I am. So what are you going to do?" Rosa looked at all the business cards spread out on the piano. "I guess I am going to make some phone calls. I guess I am going to see what happens." "Are you going to quit?" Linda asked. Rosa had not even thought about that yet. Could she quit? Should she quit? What if none of these opportunities worked out? What if this was just one magical night and then everything went back to normal? I do not know. Maybe not right away. I need to be smart about this. "That is my Rosa," Linda said with a smile. "Always practical. But hey, can I give you some advice?" "Of course. Let yourself be happy about this. Let yourself be excited. You do not have to have it all figured out tonight. Just enjoy the fact that something amazing happened." Rosa felt tears coming again, but this time they were different. Not overwhelmed tears or scared tears, just grateful tears. "Thank you for being happy for me. I know this is weird." "Weird? Girl, this is a miracle, and you deserve it. You have worked harder than anyone I know. You have sacrificed so much. If anyone deserves a miracle, it is you." They sat there together for a while, not saying much, just being present in this strange, wonderful moment. Eventually, Linda had to go catch her bus, and Rosa was left alone with her thoughts. Patricia found her still sitting at the piano around midnight. "I thought you might have left already." "I just needed a minute," Rosa said, "to let everything sink in." "I get that." Patricia sat down in one of the chairs near the stage. "Can I tell you something? When you first told me you could play piano, I did not believe you. I thought you were just desperate or crazy or both. I only let you audition because I had no other choice." "I know," Rosa said. "I could tell. But now I feel like I witnessed something important tonight, something that people are going to talk about for a long time." Patricia smiled. "You know, some guy already posted a video of your performance online. It has like 50,000 views already." Rosa's eyes went wide. "What, someone filmed it?" "Several people filmed it, actually. It is all over social media. You are kind of going viral." "Oh no." Rosa put her face in her hands. "I look terrible in that video. My dress is from a thrift store. My hair was a mess." "Rosa, nobody's looking at your dress or your hair. They are listening to your music, and they are amazed." Patricia stood up. "I have to finish closing up here, but before you go, I want you to know something. You saved this event tonight, but more than that, you reminded all those rich, comfortable people what real art sounds like, what real emotion sounds like. That is worth more than any fancy dress or perfect hair." After Patricia left, Rosa sat at the piano for a few more minutes. Then very quietly she played a few notes. Just a simple melody, nothing complicated. But even those few notes sounded beautiful on this incredible instrument. Tomorrow her life would start changing. There would be phone calls and meetings and decisions to make. There would be challenges and uncertainty and probably a lot of fear. But tonight, right now, Rosa let herself just sit with this moment. This impossible, beautiful moment where a waitress became a musician again. She thought about her father, and how proud he would have been. She thought about all the years of struggling, of sacrificing, of keeping her dreams alive on a paper keyboard in a tiny apartment. None of it had been wasted. All of it had led to this. Rosa stood up from the piano and gathered all the business cards. She carefully put them in her purse, each one representing a door that had just opened. She did not know which door she would walk through yet. She did not know how her story would unfold from here. But she knew one thing for certain. She was not invisible anymore. She had been seen. She had been heard. And she had proven to herself and to everyone else that dreams do not die just because life gets hard. Sometimes they just wait quietly, patiently, until the right moment comes along. Rosa took one last look at the grand ballroom, at the piano that had changed everything, at the stage where she had finally showed the world who she really was. Then she walked out through the employee entrance into the cool night air, ready for whatever came next. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother in the Philippines. Someone had sent her the video. She was crying, she wrote, crying with joy and pride. Her daughter, her beautiful daughter, playing like an angel. Rosa smiled through her own tears and typed back a simple message. I love you, Mama, this is just the beginning. And somehow she knew it was true. After 10 years of waiting, of working, of hoping, her life was finally about to begin. Not the life she had planned when she was 23. Something different. Something better. Something entirely her own. Rosa put her phone away and started walking toward the bus stop. Tomorrow she would call Vincent Chen. Tomorrow she would talk to Catherine Reynolds. Tomorrow she would figure out what came next. But tonight she was just going to go home, maybe eat some rice and eggs, and let herself believe in miracles again.